Rajadamnern Stadium in Bangkok is one of the most storied Muay Thai venues in Thailand, and on a Friday night in March 1968, it was operating at full capacity. 5,000 people filled the seats in air thick with heat, cigarette smoke, and liniment oil. This was not a tourist exhibition. This was the real thing, where careers were made, where betting money moved through the crowd in visible streams, and where the national sport was practiced with the seriousness it commanded among the people who had grown up with it. Bruce Lee was in the third row. He was there because a student of his, a film producer named James who was in Bangkok scouting locations, had brought him along. Bruce wanted to see authentic Muay Thai. He had trained with practitioners before and respected the system, but he had never watched it performed in its natural context, being in front of an audience that understood every technique and judged accordingly. He was wearing dark pants and a plain shirt, nothing that drew attention. Next to him, James was going through the evening's card. Main event is a title fight, lightweight division, but before that there's an exhibition. Female fighter, she's undefeated. 20 fights, 20 wins, all knockouts. Sometimes she challenges men from the audience. It's part of the show. She fights men, not professionally, just exhibition. She picks men who look tough, lets them take free shots first, then takes them apart. It's part entertainment, part demonstration that female fighters are legitimate. She's built a real reputation doing it. Bruce nodded. In Hong Kong and in the United States, women did not fight publicly at any serious level. Thailand operated differently. In Muay Thai, if you could fight, you fought. The preliminary bouts were technical and punishing. Elbows, knees, sustained clinch work. The crowd fully engaged and vocal throughout. Between fights, the ring announcer introduced the exhibition. James translated. He's introducing the female fighter. Her name is Siriporn, the Tiger of Bangkok, 20-0, undefeated and undisputed. She entered to traditional Ram Muay music. Siriporn stood around 5'4" and weighed roughly 120 pounds, but she moved with the unhurried authority of someone who had never had serious reason to doubt herself in a ring. Her Muay Thai shorts were red with gold trim. Her hands were already wrapped. The crowd chanted her name as she climbed through the ropes and acknowledged them with a wave, a smile that contained more calculation than warmth. The announcer issued the challenge. James translated, any man in the audience who could last 2 minutes with Siriporn would win 10,000 baht, roughly $300 American. Nobody volunteered. They knew the outcomes. Thus, the men who accepted were usually finished inside a minute, sent back to their seats having publicly confirmed what Siriporn set out to prove every time she did this. She scanned the crowd, and her eyes stopped on Bruce. Third row. Slight build, plain clothes, not Thai, looked like he had wandered in by accident. She pointed at him and said something in Thai. The crowd turned to look. Some laughed. James elbowed Bruce. She's calling you out. Me? Why? Because you look easy. She picks men who don't appear threatening. Makes the outcome more dramatic. I'm not interested. I'm here to watch. Siriporn spoke again, louder this time. The crowd picked it up, starting to push with noise and energy. James translated. She was calling him afraid, saying he looked like a man but was frightened of a woman. I'm not afraid, Bruce said. I just don't want to embarrass her. Embarrass her? Bruce, she's undefeated. She's a professional. I know. That's why it's a bad idea either way. If I lose, martial arts looks weak. If I win, I've beaten a woman in public in her own country. Neither outcome serves anyone well. But Siriporn kept pressing, gesturing more aggressively, and the crowd kept building. The longer Bruce sat, the more his refusal read as fear. Fear that reflected not just on him, but on the style he represented. He stood up. The crowd cheered. The reluctant tourist was going in. This was going to be entertaining. Bruce walked to the ring, climbed the steps, and ducked through the ropes. The contrast was visible immediately. Siriporn was shorter, but dense with muscle, clearly a trained fighter. Bruce was lean and offered no obvious signals of what he could do. He looked like he belonged somewhere else entirely. The referee explained the rules in Thai. James relayed them from ringside. 2 minutes, full Muay Thai allowed on Siriporn's side. Bruce could defend however he chose. 10-second knockdown or tap-out ended it, survived the 2 minutes, and the money was his. Siriporn stretched, rolled her shoulders, and looked across the ring with the settled confidence of someone who had done this many times and always arrived at the same place. The bell rang. She came forward immediately and threw a low kick, testing, measuring, proper Muay Thai technique, shin driving into thigh. Bruce checked it. His shin met hers with a loud crack that carried through the stadium. When Siriporn's expression shifted slightly. Most men she fought in these exhibitions did not know how to check kicks. They absorbed the strike on the muscle and started slowing down. This man had checked it correctly, shin to shin. She threw another. Same result. A third. And this time, Bruce simply stepped back, out of range, letting the kick find nothing. She was momentarily off balance. The crowd murmured. This was not the usual sequence of events. Siriporn changed her approach and moved to close the distance, going for the clinch. Her expertise was in that range, knees from close quarters where her control and strength had finished most of her professional opponents. Her hands reached for his neck in the standard clinch position. Bruce's hands moved before she could establish it. He controlled her wrists and denied the position. This was trapping, a Wing Chun principle, applied against a system he had never formally trained in but had studied enough to understand. They worked for position, Siriporn pressing for the clinch, Bruce redirecting and neutralizing, and neither gained a decisive advantage. The crowd was getting louder, but differently than before. Confused and increasingly engaged, the man was actually competing. He was making Siriporn work. Siriporn broke off and reset. She threw a jab-cross-low kick combination, clean mixed technique. But Bruce slipped both punches with minimal head movement, efficient and unhurried, and checked the kick. The crowd gasped. In the front rows, people were talking, pointing. Someone recognized him, Bruce Lee, the Chinese actor from The Green Hornet. The name passed through nearby sections in a wave, but most people in the stadium had no frame of reference for it. American television did not reach most of this audience. To them, he was simply a skinny Chinese man who was somehow neutralizing everything the Tiger of Bangkok threw at him. Siriporn heard the name and dismissed it. She did not follow foreign programming. This was just another man in her ring. She threw a high kick, full power, aimed at his head, intended to end the exhibition cleanly. Bruce ducked. The kick sailed over him and the momentum carried Siriporn through a partial spin, briefly exposed. Bruce could have countered. He had the opening. He reset instead and waited. The crowd began to boo. Not Siriporn, Bruce. He was making their champion look ineffective without giving them anything in return. He was not attacking, not showboating, not doing anything the audience could celebrate. He was just surviving, and in that stadium, on that night, survival without aggression read as cowardice. Paper cups and programs came down from the upper rows. 1 minute gone, 1 minute left. Siriporn was breathing harder now. He working with less precision, her frustration starting to override her technique. She called out in Thai, James translated. She was calling him a coward, saying he was hiding behind his defense. Bruce answered in English, calmly. I'm not hiding, I'm respecting. There's a difference. She did not understand the words, but she attacked again, more aggressive, less structured, abandoning some of the technical discipline that had made her dangerous in the first place. She threw a spinning elbow. Bruce saw it, ducked under the arc, and moved inside. His open palm came up and touched her chest. Light contact, controlled, nothing that would register as an attack. But his body structure was already loaded. Anyone with training could feel the potential energy in it. The Fa Jing position, capable of releasing explosive force from zero distance. He held it there for a fraction of a second, made certain she felt what was available, and then stepped back and reset. Message delivered. I had you, or I chose not to use it. Siriporn stood still for a moment. She had felt it, felt the position, felt the power sitting underneath it, felt how differently that exchange could have ended. Her eyes met Bruce's, and something passed between them that did not require translation. The bell rang. 2 minutes. Bruce had survived. He did not raise his arms, did not smile. He stood in the center of the ring and bowed towards Siriporn, a full, deliberate bow, not a courtesy gesture. An acknowledgement of a professional, from one martial artist to another. Siriporn did not bow back immediately. She was still processing what had happened. She had stepped into the ring expecting to dismantle someone who looked easy. She had encountered someone more skilled than her who had chosen, throughout the entire 2 minutes, not to demonstrate that fact through force. The referee raised Bruce's hand. The crowd's response was divided, some still booing, some beginning to applaud, the two reactions overlapping in a way that reflected the confusion of what they had watched. The ring announcer presented Bruce with the 10,000 baht. Bruce looked at the money. Then, he walked across the ring and gave it to Siriporn. The stadium went quiet. James relayed Bruce's words to those nearby in Thai. You're a professional, I'm not. You fight for a living, I don't. This money belongs in your hands more than mine. And you taught me things tonight about timing and power that are worth more than what's in this envelope. Thank you for the lesson. Siriporn's face changed. The competitive hardness that had been there since she entered the ring gave way to something more considered. She looked at Bruce not as an opponent she had failed to finish, but as a peer who had handled himself with more self-possession than anyone she had previously encountered in these exhibitions. She bowed, deeply, more formally than the situation technically required. Then, she spoke through her trainer, who relayed it to James. She says you're the first man who came into this ring and didn't try to dominate her. She wants to know where you trained and what system you use. Wing Chun originally, Bruce said, but I take from everything. Tonight I learned from Muay Thai, from you. Thank you for being willing to teach. The crowd's mood continued to shift. The booing had stopped. What they were watching now, the exchange at the center of the ring, read differently than what they had watched during the 2 minutes. The applause built slowly and then filled the stadium, not for a knockout or a technical display, but for something harder to quantify and rarer to see. Two fighters standing in a ring at equal level with no pretense between them. Bruce bowed to the crowd and climbed out of the ring. James was grinning when he returned to his seat. You handled that perfectly. I just didn't want to create problems, didn't want to disrespect Thai culture or damage her career. You did more than avoid a problem. You showed what the art is actually supposed to be. As Bruce and James were leaving after the main event, someone called out behind them. Siriporn, in regular clothes now, approached with an older man, her trainer, who spoke English. My student wants to speak with you. She wants to apologize for challenging you the way she did. She assumed you were unskilled. She didn't know who you were. I'm nobody particular, just someone who trains. Siriporn spoke. Her trainer translated. She says she felt what you had in the clinch, felt the power when you touched her. She knows you were holding back throughout. She wants to know why you chose not to use it. Bruce thought about how to put it. Because winning wasn't the objective. Surviving was. I survived. That was sufficient. But using more force than the situation required would have been ego, not skill. Real strength is knowing when not to apply what you have, the trainer translated. Siriporn listened, then spoke again. She wants to train with you. She wants to understand what you know. I'm only in Bangkok 2 more days. 2 days is more than nothing. Bruce looked at her. The cockiness that had defined her entrance into the ring was completely absent. In its place was the clean, open attention of a student who had genuinely decided to learn something. Tomorrow morning, he said. Where is your gym? They arranged the details. 6 in the morning. Her gym. Bruce arrived the next day to a small traditional space, heavy bags, Thai pads, the smell of liniment deeply embedded in everything. Siriporn was already there and ready. They trained for 3 hours. Bruce walked her through trapping, through wrist control in the clinch, through centerline theory, through the principle of generating power from whole-body structure rather than isolated limbs. He gave her concepts rather than techniques, frameworks she could apply within her own system rather than foreign forms she would have to maintain separately. Siriporn absorbed it with the seriousness of someone who had been competing long enough to recognize genuinely useful information when she encountered it. She practiced, adjusted, integrated, and asked good questions. At the end of the session, she spoke through her trainer one final time. You've given me things I didn't have. I'll work them into my Muay Thai and make them mine. That's exactly what you should do, Bruce said. Take from everywhere, learn from everyone. Stay loyal to what works, not to where it came from. They bowed and parted. Bruce flew back to Hong Kong the following day. The experience remained with him. The challenge, the decision to defend rather than attack, the training session afterward, all of it. Evidence that the principles he had spent years developing transferred across systems, across cultures, across the gap between what a fighter expected and what they encountered. Years later, after Enter the Dragon had made Bruce a global figure, a reporter asked him whether women could compete seriously in martial arts. I fought a woman in Thailand, Bruce said, professional Muay Thai champion, undefeated. She called me out of the crowd and I had 2 minutes in the ring with her. What happened? I survived. She couldn't finish me, but I could have finished her. I had the position more than once and chose not to use it, not because she was a woman, because the challenge was survival and I had survived. Going further would have been ego. That's not skill. Do you think women can fight at the same level as men? Siriporn, that fighter in Bangkok, was more technically accomplished than most men I've worked with. Better timing, better conditioning, more disciplined under pressure. Gender doesn't determine those things. Training does, dedication does, real understanding of the art does. She had all 3. She's a legitimate fighter and probably one of the best opponents I've faced. Would you fight a woman again? If the situation called for it, self-defense, testing, teaching, but not for ego, not to prove something. Fighting needs a purpose beyond demonstrating your capacity to hurt someone. That woman in Bangkok taught me something sharper than any technique she threw. She taught me that restraint is harder than aggression. The choosing not to win can be the more demanding thing. I've carried that, Siriporn went on fighting. She incorporated what Bruce had shown her, trapping elements in the clinch, centerline awareness in her striking approach, and her record continued to build. She retired undefeated, 38 wins and 0 losses, one of the most dominant female fighters in the history of Thai boxing. When she retired and journalists asked about her most significant fight, she named the exhibition in 1968. "He wasn't my most technically difficult opponent," she said. "I've faced harder fights, but he was my most important teacher. He showed me that winning is not the full measure of anything. That night in Bangkok, he defeated my ego without touching my body. He made me understand that there is always something left to learn, always somewhere further to grow. I left that ring humbled and better for it." That is a rarer thing than any trophy. The crowd that booed Bruce that night saw something they had initially misread as passivity. He had been absorbing information throughout, reading her timing, cataloging her patterns, building a complete picture of how she fought, while giving away nothing. He had demonstrated, without announcing it, that control over a situation does not require domination of it. That choosing defense over offense is not an absence of capability. It is, in certain circumstances, the clearest expression of it. Siriporn had picked a man from the crowd because he looked like an easy mark. She got 2 minutes with someone who could have beaten her badly and decided not to. He survived, returned the prize money, and spent the following morning teaching her what she had felt but could not explain. Years later, people familiar with both careers would describe that Friday night in Bangkok as one of the clearest illustrations of what Bruce had been arguing about martial arts since he began teaching. That the goal was not to accumulate victories, but to understand the full range of what a fighter could do and develop the judgment to know when to do which thing. That restraint was a discipline, as learnable and as difficult as any technique. That the most significant test was not whether you could finish someone, but whether you could recognize when finishing them would be the lesser choice. He won by not winning. And in the years that followed, both fighters said so in different ways and from different vantage points. The record showed Bruce had survived the 2-minute challenge. The more complete account showed something harder to measure, that he had walked into a ring in someone else's country under someone else's terms, and left it having earned the respect of the one person in the building whose opinion actually mattered.